very excited to talk to you about finding our blind spots and seeing what's in our blind spots as leaders. This episode is sponsored by Agent CRM. If you're in sales and tired of paying 3, 4, or 5 different companies for your email, CRM, funnels, phone, follow-up automation, check out Agent CRM. It's an all-in-one tool that combines all that you need to reach out, nurture, and close your clients. They've got weekly support calls so you can get up and running in no time. Get a free 14-day trial by going to the link below in the show notes. Hello, everyone. This is Dan with the Intentional Entrepreneur Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today. He's the author of My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success, and founder and president of My Daily Leadership, a leadership development organization with a mission to inspire 1 million of the world's best leaders to reach their full potential. I do want to welcome to the show Antonio Garrido.
Hello, Dan. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm a big fan of the show, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening and watching the show. I'm very excited to talk to you today about leadership blind spots because, we don't know what we don't know. And we were just talking on our way here, as we were about to record, and I was saying, hey, I was driving here and there's some rain. And, as I'm changing lanes, I have to check my blind spots. And without those particular mirrors, right, I don't know what my blind spots are. So I'm very excited to talk to you about, finding our blind spots and seeing what's in our blind spots as leaders. But before we kind of get into your expertise, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Oh gosh, okay. I'll keep this short because it's probably only interesting to me and my mother. When I first came out of university a million years ago, because I'm fairly ancient, I was an architect. So I was an architect for a while. I found myself entirely more by luck than judgment, working for a tremendous leader of a tremendous organization who really saw things in me that clearly I had never noticed in myself. It occurred to me recently that maybe what he was trying to tell me, and it's taken me 30 years to discover this, maybe what he was trying to tell me was maybe it was a blind spot. I wasn't such a good architect after all, but what he did see in me was the potential to manage first a division, and then a bigger division, and then kind of a country, and then part of the world. So whilst ever, he also encouraged me to go back to university and do like an MBA in strategic business management and so on. So I started as an architect and then found myself working for a tremendous leader. And then I worked for just a series of just genuinely, Dan, world-class leaders. I mean, how fortunate had I been, or have I been? So did that for a while, did really, really well. I ended up running what you might call 4 Fortune 60 companies with thousands of employees and billions in revenue. So started really, really small to like managing, running very, 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 very big. And then, my wife and I were about to become empty nesters. We have 4 children. And we said, you know what? For years, we've been talking about opening our own business. Should we do our own thing? My father's Spanish. He was a shepherd in Spain, never went to school, couldn't read or write, still can't read and write. He's in his 90s now. And he always used to tell me from when I was a child, not a child, I'm sorry, from when I was like an early adult, I suppose, because he always had his own businesses. And he would always say to me and my brother and my sister, it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. And what he meant by that is, okay, so, all right, so I'm running big, big, big organizations, and kind of, in the words of Shania Twain, that great philosopher, that don't impress me much. It's certainly. And so he was like, it's better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. So I said to my wife, listen, I've been making money for lots of people for lots of time. Should we do it? Should we start our own business? And she'd had her own business for 30 years. And she was like, for sure, do it. So we moved to Miami. We still kept a place in the UK, but we moved to Miami and we bought a sales training company. And we were very fortunate, and we grew that company to multi-millions in a very short period of time. Still have that organization in Miami, hugely successful. Wrote a couple of books on the back of it. Business doing really well. Lots of our clients were business development, sales, and sales management. And through all of my experience and coaching and training leaders, I then wrote this as my third book. This is the one that you see behind me, which is really just leadership development and helping individuals either start or really kind of springboard and grow their business. And now we have clients billions in revenue, and we look after 50 or 60 leaders in one organization per month, right the way down to solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and all of that kind of stuff and everything in between. So at a million miles an hour, that's me, architect stroke business, ran businesses, business leader, and then became owner of businesses, and 5 businesses, and done rather well. Yeah, so rather fortunate, I'm sure. Anyway, that's me.
All right, thank you for sharing. And there's a saying, uh, you can't see the forest if you can't see the trees if you're standing like right next to the forest,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And as leaders, I think it's important, but not always easy to identify the blind spots. And we don't know what we don't know. So can you share a little bit about helping leaders, how you help leaders
Sure.
identify and eliminate their blind spots?
Sure. And you're right. We don't know what we don't know, and um, we don't even know what that what that might be. So just before COVID, right? So this kind of maybe ages us both. But just before COVID, just before the Super Bowl, actually, which was just before COVID, I did a talk to about 300 leaders, 300 or 400 leaders, and I asked them in a moment of self-awareness if they would all kind of do a little navel gazing and try and figure out whether or not they had any blind spots, and if anybody would be self-aware enough to put their hands up and declare that they do have blind spots. And thankfully, Dan, there was a sea of hands. Everybody put their hands up because everybody
Mm,
recognized that they must have blind spots. So that's good. So we were
mhm,
1 for 1. Great start. My next question then was terrific. So everybody here has some blind spots. Okay, just take a mo and just write down what your own particular blind spots are. Now you're ahead of me because that's where the problem is. Because if they knew what they were, then they wouldn't be blind spots, right? QED. So we all know that we have them, but we don't know what they are. Now here's the problem. In all of my time of running divisions and companies and in all the time when I've had bosses too, I've never been to anybody's, to my boss's office, knocked on the door, nor has anybody ever knocked on my door and says, "Hey, boss, you got a minute?" And I go, yeah, come in. My door's always open. Sit down. What's up? What's going on? No one's ever said to me, Dan, "Well, Antonio, I've been watching your performance over the last 6 months, and I just thought I ought to share with you that you are without doubt the most dreadful leader and boss that I've ever worked for. And here are your issues A, B, C, D." It's never happened, Dan. It's never happened because why? Well, because I was the guy that signed the checks and decided who got the parking spots near the front door, right? It's really difficult to tell someone they have an ugly baby. No one's ever
mhm,
going to tell you. So we know we have them. We don't know what they are. No one's going to reveal them to us, right? So what do we do? Okay. Well, the first thing is it's important to do some kind of, objective, because confirmation bias, my side bias is such a powerful full thing. So we need to take
mhm,
an assessment. There are a few assessments around. We have one too, but
mhm,
like you need to figure out what you're dealing with, how big
mhm,
the issue is, because it's those blind spots that are actually going to prevent you from being as successful as you might be. They will
mhm,
limit
mhm,
potential, right? And what we're trying to do
mhm,
in
mhm,
our organization here and the one in Miami is I say here because I'm in France at the moment, but here in the one in Miami is to maximize people's potential. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to start a business or you're trying to grow a business, it's the stuff that you don't know that's probably going to hurt you most. Mark Twain says, "In this life, what gets you into most trouble is it's not what you don't know; it's what you know for sure." Necessarily so, right? So we need to figure out what these issues are because they are going to stand in our way. So, for example, just as a dumb example, and I'll tell you how to fix it in a second. So, if somebody has a high need for approval, just right, they have a high need for approval. They probably are not aware that they have a high need for approval, but that high need for approval is going to affect them in very, very, very many ways. It might stop them having, difficult conversations. It might stop them, negotiating well. It might stop them, prospecting and growing the business. It might stop them might make the sales cycles longer. It might make a million things could go bad just for one tiny thing, high need for approval, right? So once we can figure out what the blind spot is, we can then begin to do something about it. So what do we need? What do we need in order to identify our blind spots? Well, what we need is a high level of self-awareness because no one's going to. Well, self-awareness is a thing in leaders that seems to be in pretty, low supply for whatever reason because we're all human, right? And it's all an ego thing. And it's all scripting from when we were a child. Woody Allen said, "If it's not one thing, it's your mother," and he was right. Stuff that we learned about ourselves and our place in the world when we were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, when that scripting first started to develop, and when we figured out our place in the world. So we've got these issues. We know that there's no growth in our comfort zone, and there's no comfort in the zone, right? So we know all of these things. We don't know what our issues are. So we say, take an assessment, put on your big boy pants and read the assessment. And it's probably true. And those are things that are holding you back most. And now we need to do something about fixing them. Well, the best way to grow self-awareness is to journal. And everyone knows that the most successful people, the leaders of industry, the most sports people, entertainers, musicians, politicians, all of those guys journal. Everybody does. When somebody asked me, when my boss asked me a million years ago, do I journal? I'd been with the company about 3 or 4 days. And at the time I didn't, of course. And so said no. And he asked me why. And I said, I couldn't think of what else to say, Dan. So I said, probably because I'm not a 16-year-old Victorian schoolgirl. Who else journaled, right? So he said, well, go and find the 8 most successful people that you can connect with and ask them whether or not they journal. And I did, and they all did. And I thought, well, this can't be a coincidence. And when we talk to our clients and we say, hey, if you're going to be a client of ours, you've got to start journaling. Why? Because we've got to grow your self-awareness. Why? Because that leads to emotional intelligence, and leaders with high emotional intelligence outperform those that have just got high IQ 400-1. Like, it's not a close run race. This is the the hare and the tortoise. So we have to start to journal. We have to start to figure out these things that are holding us back, build this self-awareness. And I'll show you what it looks like. It's real easy. People say when we tell them they have to journal, they say, well, we would journal, but we don't know what to write. Okay, well, we'll tell you what to write. But we don't know how much to write. Well, we'll tell you how much to write as well. Well, we don't know what to write about. Okay, well, we'll do that. And we don't know how often. We'll tell you that too. So we eliminate all of the reasons to not journal, and then they may as well start, right? So here's the thing. Let's imagine that somebody is the leader of a small company, small law firm, who knows, whatever, right? What we first have them do is self-reflect. So at the end of the day, this is all we need them to do. This is like simple stepping stones. How do we get there, right? All they have to do is say, okay, let's look back on the day. What would my leadership report card look like for the day? Was I Was I world class today? Was I like A plus today, or was I okay? Was I a B? Was I a B minus? Was I a C plus? Right? Just give yourself a score for the day. Look back on the day. Every conversation
Mhm.
you had when you sent that email to Mary, could it have been any better? When you spoke to
Mm.
Tom, could you have been any clearer? What could you be more interested in Tom as well? And so just look back on the day and give yourself, a score from, like, nobody's perfect, right? So if you're
Mhm.
a minus, what it demands of you then, if you go, okay, so I was probably a B minus today, and that's okay because it's just one day in the journey.
Mhm.
So what should I have done to make that B minus a B? What could
Mm.
I not have done? What should I have done or not have done more of, done
Mhm.
less of, to make that B? Now what we're doing now is we are self-reflecting. We're going, okay, so I was here, and if I wanted to be here, then this was and I should have done more of this or less of that. Terrific. Next day, you go through your day and you say, what was my report card for the day? Probably a B today. Okay, what could have
Mhm.
made it B plus? And we start to have that conversation of looking in the rear view mirror. And it's just
Mhm.
a little bit of kind of hindsight, right? A little looking in the rear view mirror. We all know hindsight's 2020 vision. That how many times have you been in a conversation, Dan, or even an argument with Mrs. Dan, right? And 3 hours later, you think, when she said that about my mum, I should have said this, right? And we think afterwards. We never kind of think about
Yeah.
it. Anyway, when we
Yeah.
start to get into this habit of looking in the
Mhm.
rearview mirror with a little bit of hindsight, what happens then? And I'm not talking forever. I'm talking about 2 weeks. We're not talking 2 years. What then happens is a situation arises and somebody asks you a question, or someone comes and knocks on your door, or you're presented with a challenge, or you've got a problem, right? And you'll find yourself, instead of thinking later on in the day in the rearview mirror, you're going to think, what will future Antonio tonight?
Mm.
This is an inflection point. I can make a choice now. I can either respond to this like a world class leader, or I can just like the average Antonio. So, future
Mm.
Antonio, how would they be grateful? How will I be able to give myself a good score in about 4 hours' time? So, that hindsight has led to a tiny bit of insight, right? Where you go,
Mm.
I won't say this, I'll say that, and I won't do this, I won't do that. I did it just today. I wrote an email to somebody and I sent it, and I thought that was a little bit terse. I was a little bit short at the end of that. I don't mean tonight. I mean 30 seconds after having sent it, and I thought that was beneath me and beneath her. So I
Mhm.
wrote, apologized, and picked up the phone and had a conversation with her, right? So that
Mhm.
gave me a better score for the day.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got some hindsight, which leads to insight, and then that insight leads to a little bit of foresight. So I can start going, do you know what? Every time that happens, this is how I respond. All right, I need to pay attention to that. And now we're developing some kind of self awareness, which obviously leads to emotional intelligence, which obviously leads to, success. Um, so blind spots, we've all got them. Take an assessment. What a lot of people do when they take an assessment, jump on our website. That we've got those too. Is they tend to agree fiercely with all of the good things that the assessment said. The stuff that's maybe not quite so complimentary, they go, I don't
Yeah.
know, but how accurate are these things? And we always say to them,
Mhm.
well, if you have a significant other, if you have a wife or a husband or a girlfriend or whatever it is, show it to them, see what they say. And if they agree, come back and let's have a conversation about it. And then invariably they come back and say, okay, I spoke to my wife. Yes, I am exactly like that. She's been telling me for 20 years. So we have somebody do uh, assessment. We start journaling. We start them on a program of journaling. And of course, we do a million other things. But the point is, start journaling. My coach, right? So we all have, I don't know if you have a coach, Dan. I hope you do.
Mhm.
My coach, so we coach people, right? But my coach, he coaches presidents of countries as well as presidents of
Wow.
companies, right? And
Mhm.
when when he starts coaching people in the same way that we do, we say, if you want us to coach you, because you talk to yourself every second of every day, and even when you're asleep. And I talk to you once a week, right? So you talk to yourself a lot more than I do. So we've got to get your self-talk right as well. So if you don't journal, because that journal is very intentional self-talk discovery, if you don't journal, I won't coach you. So my coach, if it comes to like coaching time, if I don't take a photo of my journal and send it to him in advance of our coaching session, he
Hmm.
won't coach me. He won't coach anybody. I'm not saying we take it to that kind of level, but it's an integral part because these blind spots will slow you down in ways you can't even imagine until you start the program. And then once you start in the program, it's we're almost like Buddha looking for enlightenment, and with enough intentionality and enough focus and enough determination, we always get there. We always get there. We always help.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest golden nugget I got out of our conversation for out so far is just the effect of journaling, right? It's, you know, going back, we don't know. So what's the process to identifying that? And it's journaling. And I don't know, I know we don't have a lot of time here, but are there any other parting thoughts would you like to share with our listeners about blind spots and eliminating them?
So the I used to I when we bought our house in Miami, like 12, 13 years ago, we bought the house off an individual, and we knew that the day we bought the house, we knew that we were going to have like decorators and contractors come in and just do a few things to the bathroom and move some stuff and da 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 and paint the house, paint every surface and clean it and all that kind of stuff. So effectively, when we walked into the house, it was like a brand new house. Anyway,
Hmm.
the day that like 2 weeks later, we walked into the house and the contractor gave me the keys and he went, Antonio, said, I'm so sorry, but what happened was we were changing just as we were like painting. We knocked like a pelmet off the blind by the door by the pool, right? And we had windows that went from the very very top of the room all the way down to the floor, like right down to the floor, full height windows all around the house, right? Which was tremendous for natural light and all that kind of stuff. But Miami, right? So you had to have
Yeah,
windows, right?
yeah.
So we had these blinds, and they were beautiful, wooden, slatted. They were just gorgeous. But anyway, this chap knocked off this pelmet thing. So I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Everything else looks fine. Don't worry about it. I'll fix it." And I took this thing, which was about this wide, and I put it kind of on the kitchen cabinet. And every time I went to the pool, right, for the next week or so, every single time I went in, towards the pool, maybe we were just letting the dogs out in the back garden or whatever, I would see this thing. I would see it.
Hmm.
And I would go, I need to fix that thing. And then I would go and do my thing, right, whatever I was doing, go for a swim, walk the
Yeah.
dog, the pina colada by the pool, whatever it was, right? And every time I would come in and lock the door, I would go, need to do that. And I would go in and out of that door 15 times a day, right? Because it was like, and for 15 times a day, I would go, I need to do something about that.
Mhm.
A couple of weeks later, I'd probably say to myself 5 times a day, oh, I need to do something about that. My second book, starts with this question: why do most guitars end up on eBay?
Mm.
Most guitars end up on eBay because somebody buys a guitar with full intention, all goodwill, all determination, and I am going to rock out. I am going to learn. I've wanted to learn to
Yeah,
play the guitar for my whole
yeah,
life.
yeah.
Nothing would give me greater pleasure than learning to play the guitar. And they go out and they buy a guitar. And then they try and practice some chords, and the fingers hurt a little bit. And it's not quite
Mhm.
as easy as they perhaps imagined. And stuff got in the way. Stuff get really, really want to play the guitar, but stuff gets in the way. Before you know it,
Mhm.
it's kind of over. They buy a stand for it. It's over in the corner of the room, and it's the most
Mhm.
beautiful thing. It's almost like My brother has the world's most expensive clothes hanger. It's called a Peloton.
Yeah.
So he does. Then they end up in another room, right? And then 6 months later, they go into a bedroom. And 6 months later, they kind of go into a cover. And then they're in the wardrobe. And 6 months later, they're on top of the wardrobe. And then 6 months later, they're on eBay. 6 months after I moved into that house, I went in and out that door 1,000 times. And not once thought, maybe once or twice thought, I never did. That's still not being done. I've been in the house for 12 years, right? Because it's called a scotoma. And what happens
Mm.
is that we get real comfortable not having to address the thing, right? And it comes to the point where we even know it, and then we turn a blind eye to it, like you said, like the guy in the forest. There's none so blind as those that will not see. Then we turn a blind eye to it. Then we go la la la, not listening, and we just because we know it's going to be tricky. We know it's going to be difficult. Learning to play the guitar is difficult. Pelotons, they make you sweat. Putting this thing up, I'm going to have to buy a screwdriver, and I know I don't have the right part for it, right? And so we run away from it. And here's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
All I would say is this about blind spots is I promise you have them. If you want to be successful, they are the things that are stopping you from maximizing your potential. If you want to be a good leader, if you want to grow a business and help people, the thing that's holding you back most is the thing that you can't see. It's the thing that you don't know, right?
Mm.
You don't know
Mhm.
what you don't know, as you said.
Mhm.
It's that old tricky thing about there are things that you know, and there's knowledge. Know and don't know. There's awareness. Don't know that I don't know. It's the
Mhm.
Donald Rumsfeld. There are known knowns and there are unknown knowns, right?
Yeah.
Sort of stuff. So, get a coach. Every successful person has a coach, and the best people in the world have a coach. Don't think, well, I know stuff, right? My football team is Manchester City. I mean football, soccer, not
Yeah.
football.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Manchester City, and Pep Guardiola is the head coach, and he has the best athletes in the world, the best soccer players in the world playing for him. What do they do every single day? They train and they try and get better every day.
Mhm.
They talk to their coach every day. Rory
Mhm.
McIlroy, the number one golfer in the world. I don't know what he's doing right at this minute on Tuesday at whatever time he is, probably in Ireland, right? I don't know where he is, right? If he's not asleep, he's practicing. He's talking to his
Mhm.
coach and he's trying to get better. They're the best in the world. And whoever's
Mhm.
listening to this, you're not. So if the best in the world have to intentionally try and get better every day, get a coach, journal, do a bit of self development and improvement constantly. Where am I? If you decide you want to be a world class leader, then that means you need world class habits, you need world class approaches, world class beliefs, world class values. And if those things aren't supporting that ideal of world class, before you know it, your guitar will be on eBay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Antonio, for hanging out with us. Hey, if we are trying to figure out our blind spots and don't know where to start, what's the best way to get your assessment?
Just go to our website, all the W's, mydailyleadership.com. Mydailyleadership.com. Why daily? Because we're going to ask you to journal, and it's leadership. We want you to do well. So go to mydailyleadership.com. We've got loads of free resources on there. I'm at Antonio at mydailyleadership.com. Send me an email. We'll help you out. That's what we do. We love it. We love helping people out. Reach out to us. We'll see if we can help.
All right. Thank you, Antonio, for hanging us. Thank you for dropping such valuable information, and hope our listeners got a lot of value out of it.
Thank you, Dan. Really
All
appreciate
right.
it. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.